But when you actually peel back the layers of this onion, you see how ugly and distorted this law really is. This will allow firearm rights and legally owned firearms to be confiscated on a mere accusation.
Brenden Boudreau joins us right now. He's from Great Lakes Gun Rights. I want to talk to Brenden about what this signing of this bill means, where we go from here, and of course, how they may intend to fight it, as well as many others. Brenden, welcome and appreciate you being with us.
Good morning, Justin. Thanks for having me on.
So here we go. We knew this was coming, and it is. And by the way, folks, elections have consequences. Here you go. When you hand the radical left, both the Senate and the House here in Michigan, and they have the executive branch, this is what you get. I mean, and they're moving as fast and furious as they can because they know their time is limited here. Because when they do things like this, it's not necessarily as popular as they want to sell it to you. See, you've seen the fanfare, you've watched the videos, the news has sold it to you like this is something that's really special that's happening. This is amazing. Of course we need this. But Brenden, it's not really that clear. And in fact, people are making the case that this, again, as I mentioned earlier, will make it more dangerous for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And the truth of the matter is that and we're not surprised by this, the mainstream media has been negligent in their duty of actually reporting honestly about what this red flag law will do. They keep buying the governor and the Democrats' talking points as this is all about getting guns out of the hands of dangerous people. But when you actually peel back the layers of this onion, you see how ugly and distorted this law really is. This will allow firearm rights and legally owned firearms to be confiscated on a mere accusation. It doesn't take much evidence at all for someone to file a complaint against you with not even a judge in your county to have them issue an order without you even knowing about it and have your guns. Law enforcement will show up at your house and say, we have an order to take all of your firearms that you have in your possession. They can do this at 6 o'clock in the morning. They can do it at 9 o'clock at night. It doesn't matter. And you are not given notice until they show up at your door. And when I say that it's mere accusation, Democrats will say, well, no, there's a high threshold of evidence required here. Well, no, it's the preponderance of the evidence. That's the actual wording used in the law. And that's basically a coin flip. That basically means that a judge looks at the evidence and weighs it and says, well, there's a 50-50 chance that you could be a danger to yourself or others. And then they get to issue the order to have your guns confiscated. Not only that, it's just some more ridiculousnly in this law. The way that it's defined is whether to issue an order to have your guns taken away is whether they could be knowingly or unknowingly a danger to themselves or others. Knowingly or unknowingly, that's a wide open net to basically justify legally owned firearms to be confiscated without due process.
Knowingly or unknowingly. Yeah, it's interesting. This sounds like it's got a lot of support from a lot of different folks who, again, Brenden, this is being sold as common sense. But it's not so, especially among law enforcement. There are some sheriffs who stood up and said, law enforcement says, I just don't know if we can really go through with all this. This seems unconstitutional.
Yeah, well, and I was greatly disappointed when I heard the Michigan Sheriff's Association come out in support of this bill. And it just sounds like they were bamboozled. They were lied to by Democrats, and they took the bait and came out and said, well, we were able to strengthen this bill and make it better. But in reality, they made no changes to the bill, and I think that they only threw their support behind it because they didn't want Dana Nessel chewing on them. But in the process, they had big name sheriffs like Chris Swanson from Genesee County and Mike Bouchard from Oakland County come out and support it. But then you have, Mike Murphy in Livingston County and a couple sheriffs from up north who said, no, we're not going to support this. We're not going to let the state run roughshod over our rights, over the rights of our citizens. And of course, Dana Nessel has come out and said that basically she's going to find a way to force it on everyone, even if she has to use the Michigan State Police to get it done. And of course, this is why they included language in the bill that basically allows judge shopping, that allows for, people in any jurisdiction in the state to go to any judge in the state to issue one of these orders. And of course, what this is going to have happen is there's going to be judges that are going to be known for their for their proclivity to give out red flag orders. Let's think of some of the counties where this could happen: Washtenaw County or Wayne County, or Genesee or Ingham. These counties that are known for to be liberal bastions are now going to be red flag shops where if you want a red flag order, you just go to a judge in this jurisdiction.
So that's really the most alarming part of this. What should folks do? Because I think that you just made a point. Like, sheriffs are the last line of defense when it comes to Constitution in situations like this. Brenden, should and can people reach out to have conversations with the sheriffs about this, as constituents saying it? Because the sheriff is an elected official, an elected position. You reach out and you tell them, listen, I support you all. I really appreciate all that you do, but this law right here really has me concerned. And give them some of those examples. A judge, somebody goes judge shopping, gets a judge in a very liberal area. It's not even in your county. Would you uphold that? Would you walk through that? Would you refuse to follow that order, and and talk to them about that? Because these laws, as unconstitutional as they are, and this one won't go into effect until next year sometime, but these laws, if they're unconstitutional, your sheriff doesn't have to uphold them. They can fight back as the courts are going through the process. I'm sure there's going to be any number of lawsuits filed on this.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Justin. You should check with your local sheriffs and find out where they stand on this. Attorney General Dana Nessel may have these grand schemes of trying to force sheriffs or go around sheriffs to get this done. But the fact of the matter is that she's got limited resources. If enough county sheriffs and enough counties say no, we're not complying with this, she's going to have a hard time, getting what she wants done. And we saw this during COVID. You go up to northern Michigan during the lockdowns, it was like as a completely different state. It
Right.
was you had of course the big counties were locked down, but you go up north and the sheriffs were just completely ignoring it. The county governments were ignoring it. The health departments were ignoring it. And I think we could see a lot of that with these red flag laws as well. And even with some of the other laws that they've passed, where the local governments are just going to say, no, we're not going to put police resources into this nonsense. So what's unfortunate though is that the people who live in the more populated counties are really going to get hosed by these laws. And you saw several articles talking about how there were concerns by Democrats from urban centers who are concerned about how these laws are going to be used aggressively against minorities, and they're right to be concerned about that. Gun control laws are most aggressively used in urban centers where you have liberal judges and you have liberal prosecutors who are going to use them to go after minority populations. That's just a fact. And it's unfortunate that that's what's going to happen. And it's unfortunate that these lawmakers abandon their constituencies in supporting these laws.
Yeah, isn't that something? As you point out, Brenden Boudreau, Great Lakes Gun Rights, with us right now. These laws, the gun grab laws, the illegal, unconstitutional laws, illegal laws that they've passed, Whitmer has signed, they're going to impact disproportionately, and unfortunately, the very folks that these individuals on the left say they want to protect the most. It doesn't get much more ironic or evil than that, does it?
No, it doesn't. And what's sad too, Justin, is that they keep talking about how this is all about mental health. This is all about keeping the hands out of our guns out of the hands of people with mental health issues. But that's not what they did. That's not what the red flag law was even about. It was about whether or not a person is a danger to themselves or others under a very wide definition. It's not about getting these people help. It's just about taking their guns and then leaving them with every other form of weapon available without even coming back to check on them. We heard in committee hearings where the had prosecutors from Oakland County who made it very clear that she was not interested in dealing with mental health here, and just said that we talked about how Michigan has mental health holds, and how they really have no interest in using the mental health hold system here. They just want red flag laws. They just want to take the guns. That's all they want. And they weren't actually concerned with putting due process in this. And it's laughable how many times I heard that from Democrats saying, "Oh, we're going to pass a constitution, one that respects the Constitution." And of course, that didn't really happen, because they passed the most aggressive form of red flag law that they could find.
All right, so let's talk about this because mental health is a serious situation. People continue where I think it's going to get worse and worse because over the last few years they've done nothing to help, and of course they've done everything in their possible power to make things worse for folks. We saw the lockdowns, the tragic toll it took, not just only on the average folks, but on students, and all these things combined. As the world gets crazier and chaos, we continue to spiral out of control here. That's another issue. But I want to ask you too about the challenges that may take place. What is next? Where will these get challenged? And is it possible that they don't even go into effect?
Yeah, ultimately it's really a question of a legal strategy on challenging these laws. What we saw out of New York State within the last 6 months or so is two state Supreme Court judges in New York uh, rule that New York's red flag law, which is very similar to Michigan's red flag law, to be unconstitutional, for the very reasons that we're talking about here, is that they violate due process. They allow firearms to be seized without proper due process. And the judges, very specifically in those rulings, stated that basically they're allowing people to make decisions on, or render decisions on, mental health issues who are not qualified to make these decisions.
Mm.
It's basically allowing anyone who's not a doctor, or several people who are not doctors, to say, well, this person has a mental health issue, therefore we have to take away their guns. And the judges in those cases were talking about, well, we already have a system in place for this. We have the mental health hold system in place that we should be using instead. Um, so that's where the question is the New York law eventually going to get out of the state court system? Is that going to go into the federal courts and then make its way up to the Supreme Court? The issue that we have with red flag laws quite often is finding someone with standing, finding someone who has had their rights grossly violated by the law. And
Right.
unfortunately, that takes the law to come into effect, in order to find someone who has standing.
And a
So
very tragic and unfortunate situation likely
yeah.
would have to occur at that point, and you don't want to see any of those things happen. But in order to get traction here, that may be what has to take place. All right. So,
Yeah.
what can folks do now to support the fight and to make sure that they stand up against this? Because I know people are looking for solutions. I don't ever want to just get people riled up and get them in the state. I want people to understand that the reason we're talking about these things is that you can still take action. In fact, if we would have done that before all of this, got a little bit motivated, maybe stood up a little bit stronger before, like I said earlier, elections or selections have consequences. It's time to stand up. If you haven't done it yet, you can still do that. What can we do now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the first things we were talking about, Justin, is find out where your local sheriff stand on these issues. If they're not with you, make them clear to them that you want them to oppose these laws and to not work with Dana Nessel to enforce these laws. If they do stand with you, encourage them, stand by them, support them. But also, when it comes to elections do have consequences, and I think that the Democrats are bargaining that people are going to forget about all these unconstitutional laws that they've passed. Make sure you don't forget about them when elections come, and they are coming. You know, make sure that you go out and vote against them, or you bring your friends, your program's friends and family members to the polls as well. There are too many people who are discouraged and don't believe that voting matters, but the fact of the matter is that voting does matter, and that if you decide not to show up and say, well, there's no reason for me voting, you're just going to let the other side win. And so these politicians who voted for these laws need to feel political pain for voting for these unconstitutional measures.
Great Lakes Gun Rights is the organization, greatlakesgunrights.org. Brenden Boudreau, appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you, Justin.
You got it. Back after this, folks, you can join the program anytime. Love to hear from you. We've got to talk about tech, AI, specifically the latest updates. It's even more freaky each week we look at these things. We'll get the latest on that. Plus, an update, the Carrie Lake lawsuit out of Arizona.